unchecked surveillance by the Department of Homeland Security in the United States, and really just the overall continuing, ongoing, indefinite conversation about surveillance in the United States and surveillance around the world, more broadly speaking, and how it just continues to march forward. That there seems to be no end to news every week, month, year about the increase of surveillance, the violations of privacy. And, I've had this conversation with different friends and asking whether or not privacy is even a thing. I mean, whether privacy even matters to some people. And I've heard people make arguments that there's a generational gap that say, I'm 40 years old now, I just turned 40. So let's say maybe people my age and a little bit younger might still care about privacy, but you go maybe into people born in the, post 9/11, let's say, their awareness or understanding of a level of privacy, is nowhere near anybody who remembers life before that. I mean, I was only 17 when 9/11 happened, but I do remember life before that. And obviously surveillance existed before 9/11, but the point is it increased in such a massive way, and the public learned more about it. But let's say, for example, somebody was born in 2005 and they're 8 years old as the Snowden leaks, among other leaks, make mainstream news, that they wouldn't even probably be aware of it at 8 years old. But let's say now they're born in 2005, they're going on 20 years old now, 19 going on 20. And they have grown up in a world where privacy is essentially not something that they maybe even consider because it doesn't exist to a large degree, or at least there's the appearance that it doesn't exist. But I also believe that privacy is a right that you have. It's like a muscle. You have to flex it. You have to use it. This is why, despite the craziness, like we covered in the last episode a couple of weeks ago about the surveillance state in terms of the National Reconnaissance Office partnering with Elon Musk and Starlink, SpaceX with Starlink and the Starshield military satellite program, or the spyware companies that are preparing for Donald Trump's next presidency, or the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. There are a lot of different ways that people are trying to get into your business. And so some people sort of just give it up and don't even bother. Others, like myself, try to focus on what we can do. And like I said, take that muscle of privacy, that right, and flex it when you can. And so, okay, it might take a little bit of effort, it might take some learning, whatever, just using new tools, things like that. But I'm going to make the effort because I want to keep whatever level of privacy I can. That's sort of the school of thought that I come from. Not that I'm, believing that any of the efforts we make can't potentially be cracked by the government or even private actors, or if it can't be cracked now, it can't be cracked, it won't be cracked in the future. But as I said, it's important to practice, put your principles into practice, not just have them theoretically, hypothetically, philosophically, but actually practice them. And so that means trying to, reduce your interaction with different surveillance systems. But what happens when some of these surveillance systems are way above and beyond our control? Like, for example, the claims of them putting all these satellites in the air for Starlink, but also for the Starshield program, helping the government, U.S. government, build one of the world's largest spy satellite networks in the world, $1.8 billion classified contract between Elon Musk's SpaceX and the National Reconnaissance Office, right? Like, how do we stop that? I don't know. And as we're going to talk about tonight, there's more than 20 different forms of surveillance that the U.S. government is currently using against the American people without a warrant at the moment. And that is pretty crazy. It's nothing brand new, but we're going to get into that and ask the question, how do we protect ourselves against that? Because I am a big advocate for being proactive and taking what I call the exit and build strategy, exiting from slavery systems. So I don't use a cell phone. I don't use a smartphone. My partner Miriam does, though, and she uses the above phone. It's a de-Googled, privacy-based phone with privacy browser and privacy maps and tools and open source, et cetera. So, we try to make the effort because I think it's important, but there are some things that are just simply beyond our control, and our personal behaviors and actions, like not using Google, won't make a damn of a difference, unfortunately. So yeah, let's go ahead. Like I said, we're going to talk about my article here that just came out a couple of days ago on The Last American Vagabond. Federal government watchdog warns the Department of Homeland Security is surveying Americans without a warrant using more than 20 technologies. Federal Watchdog has released a report detailing how federal law enforcement agencies are using more than 20 types of surveillance technology without a warrant and with very limited privacy protection. So We're going to talk about that story in just a moment. But first, I want to show you guys a clip. This is from the 1970s. Just going back to the surveillance conversation back then. And I want you to hear this clip. It's only a couple minutes long. And it's from Frank Church, from the church hearings, the church commission. They revealed all about all kinds of stuff, CIA surveillance and MK Ultra and heart attack guns. So much things came out of it. But in this clip, he's particularly talking about surveillance. So this is Frank Church, Senator Frank Church in like 1976, I think. Check out this clip and kind of put this into perspective of what we're about to talk about, what's going on in 2024. But look at how bad things already were in the 70s.
Well, Senator, let me follow up by asking, do you think that the CIA and military intelligence agencies and the FBI have used the emergency provisions, both in law and by emergency agency, the Federal Preparedness Agency it's called now, to have contingency plans which threaten the liberty of American citizens?
Mr. Rowan, in due course, the committee will pass judgment on those questions. I'm not going to pre-guess the committee or prematurely attempt to pass judgment on this program. But let me tell you this. In the need to develop a capacity to know what potential enemies are doing, the United States government has perfected a technological capability that enables us to monitor the messages that go through the air. These messages are between ships at sea. They could be between units, military units in the field. We have a very extensive capability of intercepting messages wherever they may be in the airwaves. Now, that is necessary and important to the United States as we look abroad at enemies or potential enemies. We must know. At the same time, that capability at any time could be turned around on the American people. And no American would have any privacy left. Such is the capability to monitor everything. Telephone conversations, telegrams, it doesn't matter. There would be no place to hide. If this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny. And there would be no way to fight back, because the most careful effort to combine together in resistance to the government, no matter how privately it was done, is within the reach of the government to know. Such is the capability of this technology. Now, why is this investigation important? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want to see this country ever go across the bridge. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision, so that we never cross over that abyss. That's the abyss from which there is no return.
The abyss from which there is no return. Wow, and that was 1975. That was Frank Church. If you look up the church hearings, the church commission. So 50 years ago, as of a few months from now, pretty crazy. And he's describing different types of surveillance that are nowhere near what I'm about to describe. But already back there, 50 years ago, he was warning that the government intelligence agencies had access to technology and tools that could monitor the American public at a level that, as he said, could go to a total tyranny. And that is, a bridge that if we cross, there would be no going back from. Now, before we get further into the story, I'll just share a little bit more of my thoughts on surveillance. Like I said, I don't think the average person is fully even aware or maybe even cares, but definitely not aware of the level of surveillance that we're facing from spyware created by private companies that contract with military and government agencies to, get your data and spy on your phones, from police having access to all kinds of tools that I'm about to share about, to the satellites that I described a couple of weeks ago, and to, obviously being able to wire access phone lines and smartphones and all these kinds of things. Like it is an absolute reality check that we need to be able to contend with. And I am coming from a libertarian anarchist perspective, not the kind of person that wants government involved in our lives, and doesn't usually call for, let's ban the technology and try to fix the things through government. I don't think that's the answer. And at the same time, I do believe, as I said a couple of weeks ago, when it comes to spyware and perhaps AI and facial recognition, as I argue or talk about in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which everybody can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. And I do think that there is a danger that we are going into uncharted territory with AI. I don't want to just add to the chorus of people like AI is going to take over the world. It's all bad. No, there's some really cool, good, interesting uses of artificial intelligence and large language models. But I do think there is a danger posed by that. And the same thing with facial recognition. I wrote about this in the book originally in 2019, published in 2020, that there's been a lot of people warning about the push towards facial recognition and the danger it poses, because when you combine, many people are aware of the concerns around digital IDs and digital money, central bank digital currencies, trackable, traceable money, right? You understand those concerns, but those things don't really function on their own individually. It would not to create the complete control grid you want, right? So like you have a digital ID or a digital wallet. Well, that can store the state's digital currency, the Fed coin or CBDC or stable coin, whatever, right? But it also has your identifying features, or they just scan you with facial recognition cameras everywhere. But that's the beginning of a more networked control grid. That's just the beginning of it, right? So digital ID, digital currency, that stuff doesn't fully work without facial recognition cameras being placed everywhere. And then, of course, all of that, the knowing everywhere you go, studying your behavior, studying your habits, your online traffic, et cetera, and the digital currency aspect ties into a social credit score, because then they can use this sort of interconnected system to lock you out, to pressure you into doing whatever behavior they want, whether that's get the vaccine or, stop posting conspiracies on the internet, or you'll lose your job, or your score will go down, you'll lose your next promotion, things like that. So this is really just another piece of an all-encompassing system that people need. This is what I call the technocratic state. And so I've been warning about this for years. This next article, though, is going to go into 20 technologies that are now being described as, these are not brand new technologies. So this is something we've known about, but these are technologies that the US government, specifically the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, who you may or may not have heard of, but it's a government agency it's supposed to be independent, nonpartisan government agency. It's been around for, I think, 60, 70 years, maybe longer than that. But they're within the legislative branch, and they're supposed to audit, evaluate, and investigate different services for the US Congress. But they're supposed to be completely independent, nonpartisan, and they kind of exist in their own little, bubble and do reports like this. Well, this new report, as I mentioned a couple of moments ago, said that there are more than 20 technologies that the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement agencies are using. So for those who don't really understand the US government, obviously the bunch of different bureaucracies and branches, you got the Department of Homeland Security, and underneath that, you got ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, you got Border Patrol, which is Customs and Border Patrol, and then you also have the Secret Service. You got a bunch of different agencies. They focused on those three, though, the Secret Service, the Border Patrol, and ICE, for this report. And they said just among those three agencies, they have more than 20 types of detection, observation, and monitoring technologies, such as drones, facial recognition, and automatic license plate readers. Each of these technologies are currently operating without the need for a warrant approved by a judge. And so the GAO put out this report with 5 specific recommendations. They do try to say, hey, if we want to fix these things, the way they sort of promote it or discuss it is like, these are just gaps. It's not like it's a conspiracy. These are just gaps. The government's so bureaucratic that we're not properly checking to see if these tools are, not biased, because if you've understood or you followed things like facial recognition and AI, these things can be biased in different ways, whether that's against women or biased to like people of color. What I mean by that is like when they're scanning faces, sometimes it might have false identifications depending on the person's skin color. Things like that can affect. These aren't perfect technologies, right? So the GAO does make some recommendations to fill those gaps and say that there needs to be, more accountability, essentially, is what it comes down to. Now, whether or not that's going to mean anything in the long term, I'm doubtful. But the types of technologies that they discuss, there's a few of them you can see on screen here, But the different 20 technologies that they've found that are being contracted with the 3 agencies: facial recognition, fixed and mobile automatic license plate readers, audio recording devices and light poles and other infrastructure, concealed and visible body cameras, cell site simulators, also known as stingrays, drones, radio frequency collection, surveillance towers, and traffic cameras. And that also includes like the shot spotter, where basically it's an audio recording devices that they put on light poles that are supposed to help bring down gun violence, but they can also be used to track. And so in addition to that, the GAO noted that they have these 20 different technologies, but that these agencies also use a, quote, variety of analytic software systems, some of which, of course, are using AI to enhance their surveillance capabilities in public places. These systems have multiple uses, including anomaly detection, facial recognition, object recognition, and object tracking. And the GAO report does make a mention, it does acknowledge that using these technologies without warrants can, quote, raise civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy concerns. And it also says that, quote, DHS officials stated that facial recognition is not used to scan members of the general public. They claim so far. That's what they're claiming right now. That's like the official stance of the Department of Homeland Security. We're not just scanning everybody's faces willy-nilly, doing whatever we want. That's what they claim. I have trouble believing that once this technology is out there that it's not being applied. But currently, there are not a massive facial recognition federal program. There is a FBI facial recognition database that they've collected over the years. There's also private companies like Clearview AI, which has one of the world's largest facial recognition and biometric databases. They call this, by the way, your face print, like your thumbprint. They call the face that we've been giving up through selfies for years. They call that the face print. So there's currently not just a mass program of that, but some of the cases when they will use facial recognition, of course, is when they claim it's in the pursuit of some investigation or national security, stuff like that. Now we have to decide how much we want to trust these agencies when they claim that they're going to use it within their own rules and, you know, just trust them. And I don't know, maybe I'm just paranoid or I just have trouble trust issues or something, but it's hard for me just to imagine these people are just out there looking out for us, and that when nobody's looking and we have no way to really hold them accountable, that somehow they're not just going to use this technology to its fullest capacity because they know they're not going to get caught. I mean, maybe that's pessimistic or cynical, but nevertheless, the report continues. It says, quote, "We and others have reported that the introduction of AI can enhance the capabilities of technology, but it can also increase the risk of bias. For example, a 2024 National Academies report found that while progress has been made in the accuracy of facial recognition algorithms, they still perform less well for groups with certain characteristics, including those associated with race, ethnicity, or gender." And so there's the bias risks I mentioned earlier, but also the report says that these technologies pose a danger of deterring constitutionally protected behavior by Americans. And they acknowledge that according to a report from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they say that, quote, "the enhanced collection and compilation of automatic license plate reader data, that it was increasing the risk that, quote, individuals will become more cautious in their exercise of their protected rights because they consider themselves under constant surveillance." And the authors of the GAO report also note that civil liberties advocates have long noted that using facial recognition at protests and other events can cause some people to stop participating in these events. So even if you're not doing anything wrong and they're just like, hey, you're out in public, we're going to use facial recognition, some people will be deterred by that already. And I encourage you, my friends, not to be deterred. We need to stand up in the face of this. I mean, just to personalize that a little bit, I always opt out of the facial recognition check-in, which has started to expand, not just in the United States, but in Mexico, internationally, pretty much. A lot of places, international travel are now starting to try to require it. You have the option to opt out. Even when I went to Bath, UK a couple months ago for the People's Reset out there, you guys might remember I told the story that I was detained with my family for 5 hours at the airport because we chose to opt out of the facial recognition. There's a lot of people who don't even know you can do that. There's like the little tablets that are in front of you, and they've already trained so many people that whenever, because of COVID, when you walk up, you just step in front of the tablet and boom, it takes your face print and then you can walk through. But you can say, excuse me, I'd just like a normal check-in with my passport, please. And you don't even really have to give an answer, but nevertheless, this guy harassed us for 5 hours. So you can opt out of that. But also for those who are American, you might know what I'm talking about here. If you travel internationally, when you come back into the US, you got to go through customs and it's like this big giant room. Usually, obviously it depends on the airport, but it's like this big room. People are coming from international. They have Americans go here. They have people from other countries go at the other spot. And when you come back into that line, you'll usually come up and talk to a DHS agent, a Border Patrol agent. He or she's sitting at a desk, and they have these little like goggle looking things, like a little camera. And in our experience, we walk up, hello, give them our passport, and they'll say, look at the camera. And it looks like little goggles. And then people just do it. And I'll admit, I've been doing it for years. But I recently realized that that's optional too. And so now when I come back and I go through that thing and I stand to the side of it, that's the other thing, is make sure you're not even walking up to that thing where you're in its range, because they are snapping photos. And the big concern here is not just that the US government's going to use it, but who's the company that they're contracting with? What's the app that they're using to collect the photos? Where's that information going to get stored? How's that going to be used against you now or in the future, right? So I now opt out of those things, in addition to opting out of the body scanners and stuff like that as well. But we have to be willing to stand up to these things and push back against them. And as it gets more widespread, and there are businesses like Amazon and others that are testing out these, humanless shops and stores that you can come into, and it's just going to scan your face, or if you have a little chip in your hand, scan your hand, and you walk in, you grab whatever you want, and you walk out. And it's because it's already scanned your face and connected that to your bank account, your digital wallet, whatever else, and automatically deducted the money. Oh, it's so convenient, it's so fast. I don't have to talk to a dirty human. But all of those things are going to normalize this technocratic state. So we have to push back publicly. We need to push back loudly. I'm not saying create a scene or be a fool of yourself, but definitely let's not be the kind of people like this report was describing, which is a reality that some people, I've had this happen for years. I mean, I can speak from direct experience. When I found out I was under surveillance by the Houston Police Department back in 2012, my activism started in Houston in 2010. And after a couple of years, we were just kicking butt. We were making the news. We were getting, coverage and protesting. It was a lot of energy back then, 2010, 11, 12. And I learned later by some leaked information from two different sources within the Houston Police Department that myself and the Houston Freethinkers, the activist group I started, that we were under surveillance. I was even sent pictures of a classroom training session with a picture of myself and a friend and the name the Houston Freethinkers, with cops in the room being taught about us. And that was the beginning of my awareness of how surveillance, how real it can be. I'm like, we haven't even done anything yet. We're building, community gardens. We're raising money for benefit shows. We're protesting every now and then, passing out flyers and DVDs. But nevertheless, we were under surveillance. And even with that, some people said, Derrick, I'm not sure I'm going to come to events anymore because, I got this situation I'm dealing with or whatever. I don't want to have any issues. It's a real thing. It can happen. So even if you are not the person you're like, I'm nobody cares about what I'm doing, what I'm up to, we still have to flex those muscles, those privacy muscles, as often as we can. Opt out when you can against facial recognition. Say no to just handing over your data, your face print, just because it's a brand new app that you want to play, some video game or something, because that's the way that they're going to normalize this technocratic state that I've been warning about for years. They're going to normalize it through entertainment. They're going to normalize it through convenience, like I was just saying with the stores where you don't have to talk to a human, you can just pop in and out. They're going to normalize it in a number of different ways, and we have to keep pushing back against it. We have to find ways to opt out. That is what my work focuses on. Again, if you're interested in solutions and you don't want to just watch the world get more and more surveyed as weeks and months and years go by, but you actually want to try to protect and preserve your liberty, your privacy for yourself, your family, and for the coming generations, then I encourage you to check out my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. You can find it again for free. Download free audiobook at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to, theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. There's also a Spanish version, a German version, and a French version as well. And as I said, there is an audiobook. So
since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.